Hey everyone, welcome to another video on the limited palette. Today I'm going to use these three colors from Daniel Smith watercolors. This is lemon yellow, PY175. This is cerulean blue chromium, PB36, and this is quinacridone magenta, PR202. These are the three colors in my main palette: lemon yellow, quinacridone magenta, and cerulean blue chromium. Of the three colors, I use up cerulean blue chromium very quickly, and that's followed by lemon yellow and quinacridone magenta. So let's create some swatches for them right now. Lemon yellow is the brightest yellow that I know of from Daniel Smith. So this is very transparent, very bright. And this is quinacridone magenta. It's quite transparent as well. All this texture that you see is actually from the cold press watercolor paper texture. This paint, this color, it doesn't granulate. And this is cerulean blue chromium. I love the texture, the granulation. Let's wait for that to dry, and meanwhile we'll paint the color wheel. So now I'm going to add some magenta to the yellow. We have this very dull, this is not even orange, I cannot call this orange. This is a dull mixture of lemon yellow and quinacridone magenta. Let me add a bit more magenta to that. So we have something like this. It's not the bright orange that I usually use. And now let's paint magenta into this circle here. And you can see the difference between the color alone and the mixture. And now let's mix some magenta with cerulean blue chromium. We have a nice purple, a granulating purple. Let's add a bit more cerulean blue to the mixture. And this is how it looks like with more cerulean blue. So you can see these two shades of purple, they are quite different. And now let's add some cerulean blue to lemon yellow. So we have a very bright and cheery green color when you add a bit of cerulean blue. And when you add a bit more, you have this color. Just for comparison purposes, I'm going to show you sap green versus this mixture. Let's see if they are close. Quite close, but with a slight difference. And let's show you new gouache versus these two mixture. New gouache is the color that I use when I want to mix a bright orange. On its own, it's already quite bright, and you can add a warm red to get an even brighter orange. So this is how these two orange mixtures compare to new gouache. If you're wondering about the black stuff here and here and here, they are actually from this sketch from the opposite page. Because this watercolor paper is a bit thin, some of the water actually went through the paper. And now let's mix the three colors together to see what sort of grays and black we can get. So this is what I have here. Let me add a bit more blue to the mixture. Maybe a bit more magenta. And maybe a bit more yellow. As usual, it's a bit challenging to get that really neutral gray. This is a bit greenish, so let me just add a dab of magenta to it. So these are the various neutralized tones that I can get, and because cerulean blue chromium, it doesn't mix completely with other colors, you can usually see the blue within the mixture itself. For example, here we can see traces of blue in this mixture. And sometimes even here as well, we see the blue and the quinacridone magenta. They are together, but they are also not together at the same time. And here we see some blue inside the yellow. When it comes to mixing gray tones with cerulean blue chromium, I usually use it with burnt sienna. So I'm going to show that to you right now. So this is cerulean blue, and let me add a bit more burnt sienna to it. So you have this gray tone here. It's much faster to get a gray tone with burnt sienna and cerulean blue compared to mixing the three colors. I think I can get a gray tone somewhere here, but it's so much faster with burnt sienna. And lastly, I'm going to mix the three colors together in concentration to see if I can get a black. And this is what I get. It's quite dark, but not really black, but it's close to black. Maybe I need a little bit more blue. I think I get that color somewhere here, but again, it's a bit difficult to get that really dark black. And this is good enough for me because it contrasts very strongly against the white of the paper. And that's what I want to achieve when I'm mixing a black. The color swatches are almost dry. Two things that come straight to my mind when I look at the colors is the colors are really vibrant, they are very strong. Daniel Smith is a very good brand. And the other thing is the limitation of this palette is its inability to create bright orange. So if I want a bright orange, I might need to include a new gouache and maybe another warm red, because quinacridone magenta, it's not as warm compared to other reds out there. So that would be the limitation of this palette. But it can create bright greens and bright purples, just that it's limited on the warm side. So I'm going to use the limited palette to color this sketch today. I'm not sure if you can see some marks here. I accidentally splattered some magenta onto the paper, and I tried to clean this off as quickly as I can, but some of the magenta has actually stained the paper. With some colors, when it's still wet, you can very quickly use tissue or wet towel to clean it up, but not so with quinacridone magenta. This is still not too bad because quinacridone magenta is considered medium staining. There are some colors that stain very easily and permanently, and if you get them onto your clothes, it's almost impossible to wash them off. And that's also one reason why some museums, they do not allow visitors to use wet medium in their museums, because they do not know what paint you are using, and if you accidentally drop some paint that is heavily staining onto the floor, onto wood for example, it would be impossible to, it would be very difficult to clean that off. Let's take a look at the reference photo. So this was taken on a bright sunny day. I can use cerulean blue for the sky, and for this building here, which contrasts very strongly against the sky, I'm going to mix a gray tone for this. The main building is in a light yellow orange color, but it's very light, so I'm probably going to use this color here. And the roofs, they are usually, for roofs like this, I will paint them bright orange, but in this case, maybe this, I guess this may look good on the roof and also on the tiles of the floor. And this will be a gray tone. I'm going to mix three colors for this. We have some greens as well, so I can use the green mixture. And the strong shadows, later on I'll be mixing the three colors together to create the shadows. And you can see that in this particular photo there are a lot of very dark areas, like this area here. This is almost black, so I'll be needing this mixture later on. Alright, let's get started. I usually start with yellow, and especially with lemon yellow, it's very easy to get it dirty, so I'm going to start with lemon yellow. I'm going to add a bit of magenta. Alright, so let's paint this part of the building. If I feel like I need some variation, I can always add a bit more magenta. Alright, this is done. Let's move on to the next color. The next color I'm going to use will be Cerulean Blue Chromium, and that would be for the sky. This is usually my favorite part of sketching, painting the sky with Cerulean Blue. Very specifically, painting with Cerulean Blue because this is such a lovely color. So let's paint. I can go over the building because later on the building will be in a darker shade of color. There are some white clouds there. I'm going to leave some white areas for the clouds. But for these areas here, I'm going to paint them all in blue. I'm going to create some soft edges for the clouds. Wow, the paint is still wet. You see, once the paint is dry, it's almost impossible to lift this off. So you have to work really fast. And this is even more so with staining colors. Now that I have yellow and blue, the next color I want to paint is green. So I'm going to wash my brush properly because I'm going to pick up some yellow. And I'm going to add some cerulean blue to that to get the green for the grass here. If you need to make the green darker, you just have to add a bit more cerulean blue to it. And if you want to dial down the green color, you can add quinacridone magenta. So you see here, this shade of green is much duller compared to this side here. Always start with vibrant colors, and if you need to make them a bit dull later on, you can neutralize them. But if you start with dull colors, there would be no way to make them bright later unless you clean your brush. The next step is to paint the orange and the reds in the scene, so that would be the roofs and the tiles on the floor. I'll be using lemon yellow and quinacridone red. This is not going to give me a bright orange, but we just have to use what we have. It's actually not too bad, but it's definitely not as bright compared to New Gouache, for example. So it's a very subdued type of look. And that's about all the orange and reds in the scene. And the next step will be to mix the gray tones for the tiles. So for the gray tones, I'm going to use yellow, red and blue. Oops, this part here should be white color. I accidentally painted over it. But doesn't matter, later on I can use my white gel pen to bring back the white. So it's actually very difficult for me to get that neutral gray tone. So as I'm painting the grays, I'm constantly adding some blue, some reds and some yellow to shift the colors around. That's why you see all these colors within the mixture. And for this part, maybe I should just start painting the shadows. The shadow is quite dark, so I'm going to mix a darker shade for the shadow. It's actually quite scary because painting dark shades is always a bit scary. Here, there is a strong shadow going this direction. This is where a smaller brush will really help. Remember that building at the back? Let's color this. Later, when this is dry, I'm going to be using my white gel pen to add in lines here. This is now dry. I'm going to use another brush because the earlier brush is just a bit too blunt. So now I'm going to mix the three colors to get the black. I want a very concentrated mix because I want the black to be really dark. You see some of these details, the horizontal lines that I've drawn for the windows, they are now covered. The chairs that are outside under the sun, they are also in black color. Even with this brush, I wasn't able to paint the really tiny details properly. And now I can use the white gel pen to draw the lines for this tall building behind. You see this part here, this should be white, but I accidentally painted over. And it's a bit difficult for me to use this white gel pen to color it. Maybe I'm going to switch to gouache. So now I'm using gouache to paint back the white areas. Alright, this is the completed sketch. I think it has dried. So let's take a closer look. The granulating texture of cerulean blue is why this is one of my favorite colors. This is on cold press paper. On hot press paper there will also be granulation, just that it's going to look a bit different. For the shadows, I have used all the three colors for mixing. And here you can see some granulation. You can see the individual colors inside the shadows because I try not to mix them completely in the palette, but I try to let some mixing happen on the paper, so that's why you can see some of the individual colors showing through. See all the lovely granulation from cerulean blue. Some people may prefer a cleaner look, a more stylized, illustrative look. Some people may prefer a more textural look. So if you like your shadows to be cleaner, then you should use a color that is not granulating. Sometimes for me I prefer granulation, sometimes I do not use granulation, so it really depends on the colors that I'm using. So here we have some shadows as well. This is a bit reddish, but you can still see the blue inside, which is why I think this is a really interesting mix. So for some of these areas here where I touched up with white gouache, I should have been more careful to leave this area white, but because I accidentally painted over, so I have to go and touch up with the white gouache. So these are, I would say, mistakes. It's good if you can get it the first time, if you can get it right the first time, but if not, sometimes you can go back and fix the mistakes. And you see here, this green here, I added a bit more red to it, so that's why this green is less vibrant and clean or bright compared to this green on the ground. You can see these two shades. This is with a little bit of quinacridone red added. Sorry, this is with a little bit of quinacridone magenta added, and this is without. And on the left side, I did not add quinacridone magenta. You can see that this whole piece of green, it looks like it's one seamless piece of green. There is no distinction between the background and the foreground, so it looks a bit weird compared to this side where it's clearly different areas. Even though I wasn't able to mix a bright orange, the orange mixture that I have from lemon yellow and quinacridone magenta, it still looks alright. It looks quite natural when placed beside all the other colors in the sketch, and that is, I think, the most important thing when it comes to sketching. All the colors should look like they belong to the same family, and in this case that family is this combination of 3 colors. So that's all for today's video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. If you want to check out other videos on limited palette, I have created a playlist with several videos in that playlist, so you can check that out. I will put the link to that playlist in the video description below. Thanks for watching today's video. See you in the next one. Bye!